The jungle of Viridian 3 was alive with whispers. Leaves shivered beneath the weight of unseen creatures, and the thick air clung to every breath like damp cloth. Sergeant Eli Ward pressed his body into the mud, the scent of decay and chlorophyll filling his lungs. His camouflage suit, woven with moss and synthetic fibers, made him indistinguishable from the forest floor. Through the lens of his scope, the world became still, an emerald haze broken only by the distant shimmer of alien light. Eli had spent half his life in jungles like this, though none had ever felt so foreign. Viridian 3 was an ocean of growth, where vines swallowed equipment within hours and the humidity corroded everything else. The Kraelyth thrived here. Tall, insectoid, and elegant in their cruelty, they'd made the planet their fortress. Their armor gleamed with mirrored scales that bent light and mocked bullets. They called humans relics of a primitive age, too stubborn to die, too proud to surrender. Eli didn't mind the insult. He'd been called worse by drill sergeants and ex-wives. What mattered was the rifle cradled in his hands. An M24 bolt-action, refurbished 3 times, its wooden stock darkened by sweat and rain. The aliens could keep their plasma rifles and pulse blades. Eli trusted the simple truth of a well-made weapon. The breath, the trigger, the result. He adjusted the focus and watched a Kraelyth patrol move through the mist. They walked with casual arrogance, voices chittering through their comlinks. The translator in Eli's earpiece caught fragments. Laughter, a sneer. Still hiding, human ghost? One voice hissed. Bring your metal toy. Let's see how far it throws. Their taunting was ritual now, a cruel entertainment. The Kraelyth believed human projectiles were quaint relics. Plasma burned, but bullets, they said, merely tickled. A week ago, Eli's squad had believed the same. They'd faced the Kraelyth with standard issue Gauss rifles, confident in human engineering. Now most of them were gone, reduced to ashes by weapons that sang through the air faster than sound. Command had pulled survivors back, leaving Eli alone in the Green Labyrinth. His orders were clear. Infiltrate, locate the alien beacon, and find a way to cut their reinforcement line. No support, no extraction until success. He slid backward into the undergrowth, silent as the soil itself. Each movement was measured. Elbows first, knees second, breathing through the nose to keep from disturbing the insects crawling across his cheek. Somewhere behind him, thunder rolled, or maybe it was orbital artillery. On Viridian 3, the two sounded the same. As he crept through tangled roots, he thought of the people who'd called him obsolete. The brass had nearly retired him twice. Too old, too analog. He smiled at the irony. Out here, the analog survived. The digital fried itself in the humidity. The M24 still fired. He reached a ridge overlooking a clearing. Bioluminescent vines draped across alien machinery. A beacon tower, pulsing faintly, feeding data into the heavens. Around it, Kraelyth soldiers lounged, confident and unguarded. Eli steadied his scope on the lead officer. The alien's armor shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the world in fractured color. Beneath that brilliance, Eli saw weakness, condensation beating at the armor seams. Water, he thought. Even the mighty corrode. His finger rested on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Not yet. One bullet could start a war, but a smart bullet could end one. He needed to move closer, confirm the beacon's uplink path. The mission demanded patience. Somewhere in the dense canopy above, an alien drone buzzed past, its sensors sweeping. Eli froze, heartbeat syncing with the jungle's rhythm. When the sound faded, he exhaled slowly and began to crawl again. The night thickened. Far off, a Kraelyth voice drifted through static. Still breathing, human? Eli grinned into the mud. For now, he murmured. Then, like a shadow among shadows, he vanished deeper into the green hell. Eli moved deeper into the jungle, each step calculated, each breath released with monk-like restraint. The damp earth shifted beneath him, swallowing the sound of his movements as though the planet itself wished to hide him. The Kraelyth patrols had grown more active since dusk. their luminous armor casting wavering reflections across the vegetation. Eli kept to the shadows, letting the vines and ferns envelop him until he became another thread in the tapestry of the forest. He had learned long ago that survival depended less on speed than on vanishing from the world awareness. He advanced toward a cluster of ridged stone formations, natural pillars the Kraelyth used as temporary lookouts. Their drones circled overhead, mapping thermal anomalies, but Eli's ghillie suit diffused his heat signature into the ambient humidity. He paused beneath a twisted root archway and studied a trio of Kraelyth soldiers standing on the nearest outcrop. Their posture radiated boredom. They weren't expecting resistance, let alone a lone human creeping through their territory. Their arrogance was a shield stronger than anything they forged. Eli knelt and unfolded a small fiber mesh map, its surface flickering faintly as it synced with his optical implant. The alien beacon lay 2 kilometers east, yet the numbers told only part of the truth. Terrain like this stretched a kilometer into an ordeal. The jungle's labyrinthine design punished complacency. He marked 3 viable routes, all dangerous, all dependent on timing and silence. He chose the narrowest one, banking on the Kraelyth, avoiding choke points where their armor snagged on vines. As he folded the map, voices crackled through the foliage. Kraelyth scouts returning from a sweep. Their distorted syllables echoed off the stone, vibrating faintly in his chest. He pressed himself into the mud, lowering his heartbeat through practiced breathing. The scout's shadows drifted across him like drifting specters. One paused, mandibles clicking in amusement. Human ghosts everywhere, it muttered. All dead, all hiding. Another responded with mocking tones, delighting in the story. Their confidence bordered on childishness. They believed themselves invincible. Their footsteps faded. Eli rose slowly, wiping grime from his scope. He adjusted the windage and verified his ammunition. Only 7 rounds remained in his primary mag, with another 10 in reserve. 17 bullets against an army. The thought didn't intimidate him. It merely clarified what mattered. A weapon wasn't powerful because it fired frequently. It was powerful when it mattered at the exact moment of truth. He climbed the stone outcrop once the patrol cleared, testing each foothold for stability. At the top, the jungle opened enough for him to see the distant glow of the beacon through the haze. Its pulsing light resembled a heartbeat, alien, steady, and unervingly calm. Around it, silhouettes moved with deliberate patterns. These soldiers were alert, unlike the scattered patrols. Eli studied them through his scope, memorizing rotations, gestures, blind spots. The Kraelyth worked like a hive, coordinated, graceful, and utterly predictable once observed long enough. A low vibration trembled through the ground. Eli shifted position and spotted a larger figure emerging from the foliage below, a Kraelyth officer adorned with gleaming armor segments arranged like overlapping knives. It barked orders at the guards, and they responded with disciplined precision. Eli watched the scene intently, noting how the officer's armor refracted moisture in uneven patterns. The humidity here was heavier than before, the air thick enough to taste. His earlier suspicion grew stronger. The alien armor sheen faltered where condensation pooled. He tested his theory by tracking the officer's movements. Each time the alien neared a patch of mist, faint distortions rippled across its armor plates. The M24's rounds wouldn't merely punch through. They would exploit the weakening effect of moisture. The realization tightened something inside him, not joy but purpose. The Kraelyth had spent days mocking his weapon. Soon they would learn what misplaced confidence cost. He lowered the rifle and continued toward the beacon, his pace patient but resolute. He needed the perfect vantage point, the perfect timing. One shot would not just break armor. It would break certainty. And once certainty shattered, the rest would follow. The jungle's chorus intensified as though urging him onward. Eli steadied his breath, the mission sharpening into a single, unbroken line of intent. The moment of truth was approaching, and he intended to meet it without hesitation. Eli settled into a hollow formed by the roots of an enormous tree, its bark twisted like ancient rope. From here, he had a clear line of sight toward the beacon's perimeter. The Kraelyth guards moved with renewed agitation, their patrols more frequent, their voices sharper. Word of the fallen lieutenant must have spread. Eli watched them reorganize, their mirrored armor fracturing the light into jittering shards. Fear had not yet taken them, but unease, real, creeping unease, pulsed through their formations. That shift mattered. A confident enemy behaved predictably. A worried one revealed its seams. He unlatched his pack and removed a coil of vine-woven decoys he'd fashioned on the way. They resembled distorted silhouettes of a crouched human, barely more than restless shadows, but shadows were enough to draw attention. He placed one several meters to the right, attaching a small heat canister that imitated body warmth. Another he fixed near a fallen trunk, its form barely noticeable unless a scanner swept directly across it. The goal was simple: divide the Kraelyth, fracture their coordination, make them doubt every motion in the foliage. The jungle had always been humanity's great equalizer, and Eli knew how to coax it into becoming an accomplice. He retreated back to his hide and watched as the first drone drifted overhead. Its sensors pinged the heat signature of the nearest decoy. The drone emitted a sharp tone, and within seconds a cluster of Kraelyth converged on the position. Eli waited until the officer, the same one he'd observed earlier, stepped into view. The alien's voice cut through the comms, irritated, clipped. It ordered a multi-directional sweep, sending half the unit to inspect the decoy while the others extended their perimeter. The precise moment the formation stretched thin, Eli exhaled. He steadied his rifle and aimed for the officer's shoulder joint, where the condensation had pooled thickest. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat. At the bottom of a long, steady exhale, he squeezed the trigger. The report of the rifle echoed like a thunderclap swallowed by the jungle. The round struck the armor, shattering it into glittering fragments. The officer staggered, frozen in disbelief, before collapsing behind a tangle of roots. Panic rippled through the alien ranks. They hissed warnings, their orderly formation breaking as they scrambled for cover that wasn't designed for ballistic threats. Eli chambered another round. A second guard exposed its flank while shouting into its comm link, and Eli dropped it with a clean shot. The guards fired wildly into the trees, their plasma bolts searing through vegetation, scorching leaves into ash. But panic clouded their aim. Their shots weren't calculated. They were reactions to fear. The drones swerved erratically, unable to isolate Eli's position amid the dense humidity and temperature distortion. One of the Kraelyth shouted something that translated loosely into a curse, blaming the jungle for interfering. Eli shifted to a new firing position before they could triangulate the sound. Movement was life, stationary meant death. From his new perch, he watched the remaining guards retreat inward, forming a defensive ring around the beacon. Their arrogance had evaporated. What remained was instinctive survival. Eli could almost feel their disbelief. How could an obsolete rifle carve through their finest armor? How could a lone human outmaneuver trained soldiers? That disbelief worked in his favor. Doubt was a weapon sharper than any blade. He wasn't here for a prolonged firefight. The beacon was the target. As the Kraelyth collapsed inward, he moved in a slow arc, using their panic to create openings. A cluster of ferns concealed the final stretch. He crawled beneath them and emerged behind a toppled support beam half crusted with moss. The beacon loomed above him now, towering, crystalline, humming with alien energy. The guards faced outward, unaware he'd slipped past their lines. Eli withdrew 2 compact charges, their casings wrapped in waterproof polymer. He planted one at the base of the central conduit and the other along a stabilizing arm. The devices synced with a soft vibration he could feel in his fingertips. He retreated to a safe distance, heart steady despite the adrenaline. The countdown began. A sudden shout cut through the clearing. One Kraelyth spotted him and raised its weapon, but Eli was already moving, slipping back into the jungle's embrace. The charges detonated a heartbeat later. Light flared, searing through fog and foliage. The beacon shuddered, split, and collapsed in a cascade of fractured crystal. The ground trembled beneath Eli's hands as the structure imploded. He didn't stop to watch it fall. He already knew what the destruction meant. For the Kraelyth, for the war, and for the myth they'd built around their invulnerability. The jungle swallowed him again as he vanished into the shadows, the echo of the explosion chasing him deeper into the Green Labyrinth. Smoke drifted through the canopy long after the beacon collapsed, rising in pale spirals that wove themselves into the night air. Eli moved steadily through the undergrowth, aware that the Kraelyth survivors would be scrambling to regroup, desperate to understand what had just torn their confidence apart. His muscles ached from the crawl, and the weight of the rifle strained his shoulder, but his mind remained clear. The mission had changed the moment the beacon fell. Reinforcements would no longer appear in shimmering columns. The jungle, once a battleground of desperation, now tilted in humanity's favor. Yet victory never felt simple. It settled on him like a heavy cloak, threaded with relief and something far quieter, reflection. He reached a ridge where the soil rose into a gentle slope. There, he paused, letting his senses adjust to the shifting rhythm of the jungle. The Kraelyth were quieter now. Their comms, once filled with ridicule and bravado, carried only strained commands and fractured reports. Eli listened, parsing the static, tracing the edges of their fear. The aliens had believed themselves untouchable, certain their armor made them superior. That certainty had died beneath the weight of one well-placed shot and the collapse of their glittering beacon. Humanity had always thrived in the spaces where certainty fractured. Eli checked his rifle, wiping condensation from the stock with practiced motions. The M24 felt heavier now, not from fatigue, but from meaning. It wasn't just a weapon. It had become a message carved into the jungle floor. The Kraelyth had scoffed at its simplicity, its lack of energy coils or glowing conduits. They mocked the bolt action, calling it quaint. But technology didn't win wars, understanding did. Precision did. The willingness to observe, adapt, endure. Eli had survived this long, not because his rifle was powerful, but because he understood how to wield it when every detail mattered. A soft rustling drew his attention. Human soldiers emerged from the foliage, their armor scuffed, their faces streaked with mud. They moved cautiously, weapons raised until they recognized him. Relief washed across their expressions. One of them, Corporal Juna Reeves, approached first. Her voice trembled with disbelief as she took in the glow fading from the destroyed beacon miles behind them. "Ward, you actually did it. Command said you were alone out there." "Still am," Eli replied, though he allowed himself a faint smile. "You all safe?" "Safe enough now," she answered. The aliens fell back the moment the beacon went down. They're scattered, confused. Then, with a tone halfway between pride and awe, "Did you really take out their officer? With that rifle?" Eli tapped the M24 stock. Seemed appropriate. The squad gathered around him, forming a loose perimeter as they prepared to move toward a temporary extraction point. Their energy felt different, renewed, anchored by the realization that the enemy wasn't invincible. Eli felt it too. The victory wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Something fundamental had shifted in the minds of both species. As they trekked deeper into friendly territory, chatter grew among the soldiers. Rumors of the shot that broke the Kraelyth's arrogance were already spreading. Some embellished the story, turning it into legend before Eli could correct them. He didn't try. Stories had their uses, especially in war. If belief in a ghostly marksman with an ancient rifle helped steady the next soldier's hand, then let the myth grow. While the squad advanced, Kraelyth transmissions continued to flicker across Eli's comms. Their tone had changed entirely. Gone was the cruel amusement. In its place came cautious analysis, fragmented theories about humidity-induced armor failure, frantic attempts to understand the unfamiliar threat. They spoke of the human ghost, with reverence edged by dread. Their war councils would spend long nights reinterpreting what they thought they knew about humanity. As the jungle thinned and the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, Eli allowed himself a moment of stillness. He sat on a fallen trunk, reloading his rifle with deliberate patience. The morning light glimmered on the metal, softening its worn edges. He thought of the people they'd lost, of the friends who never made it out of the jungle, and let that weight rest with him. He didn't fight it. Grief was part of the path he walked. When he rose, the jungle seemed quieter, almost contemplative. The war wasn't over, but the balance had shifted in ways the Kraelyth hadn't anticipated. Eli slung the rifle over his shoulder and joined the squad, his steps steady. Humans had always been underestimated. That was their advantage. Let the galaxy laugh at their tools. Humanity would teach it, again and again, what determined hands could do.